Hey everyone, I got something a little more fun today. Not that I don't think my videos are fun or anything, but some of it can get a little dry, a little technical. But today I want to talk about what I've been experiencing recently. Half of this is my fault, half of it definitely wasn't. So, I by now you'll probably already see whatever title and thumbnail I give this, but today I want to talk about my experience in trying to upgrade my PS3, my PS3 experience. So let's start from the beginning. And for now, we're just gonna have some footage of my probably Yakuza Dead Souls, because that was one of the first things I was testing on this thing. At least at an extensive length or whatever. So just to have some footage in the background, and then at the very end, I'm going to put a little bit of footage for something I'm actually trying to work on in the background. That's gonna take a while. I got to hunt down some things and stuff, and I want to take my time with this one. Not too much time, but take some time with it. So let's start at the very beginning. Why I was even going on this journey. Okay, as anybody who's watched my videos knows by now, I'm very into hardware and technology. Almost, and I've said this multiple times, I'm almost more so into technology than I even am playing video games. But, obviously I play video games. I'm really into technology. Now, that's not to say I'm some sort of super genius or whatever, but, because I'm so interested, actually just enjoy learning about this kind of stuff, I'm pretty technically knowledgeable. Again, I'm not trying to claim I'm the smartest guy in the world with this, but I know a thing or two. But that doesn't always prepare you for problems that come up, obviously, especially when you have very specific issues that could be multiple things. So, I have not an original model PS3, but the second revision. Unfortunately, it was the one that removed actual backwards compatibility, but it's still one of the original, not so great, overheating kind of cracked thermal paste sort of models, if you know what I'm saying. And if you don't know what I'm saying, I don't want to keep anybody out of this video or anything. So, those models, very specifically, they had a lot of problems with overheating. That whole generation was messed up, including the original launch model 360s with the red rings of death and stuff. So, originally when I was younger, me and my brother, we had one of these model PS3s, and it ended up getting cracked thermal paste and stuff. And, we were younger, we didn't know how to fix this kind of stuff. So, it got that little yellow light of death thing, and it just never turned on again. We didn't really know what to do about it. We didn't really have the money to fix it or anything. And then later on, when I had my own money and stuff, I got my own, another PS3 specifically, so I could play some, the Dynasty Warriors games that were only on there, and, at the time, I happened to only be able to find, a PS3 version of Catherine, and I wanted to play that really badly. So I got, a refurbished model that, again, the second revision, but it's still one of the older, bigger models that are prone to overheating and thermal paste issues and all this stuff. So, for a while, I haven't used it, too much. When I first got it, I was, but it wasn't anything I used, heavily. But I started using it a little more again recently, especially because it is, genuinely very useful for some, PS2 emulation. The PS2 emulator built into the PS3 stuff is, not built in. This is, pure software, and I think you actually had to, download stuff for this, technically. But, yeah, the PS2 emulator on the PS3 is, actually pretty good, and it's a very easy, simple solution to get HDMI out, clean digital video and stuff. Because even with an OS&C and stuff, there's still some analog in that equation there. But anyways, to get everyone up to speed. So those models, over time, thermal paste cracks, which is kind of the stuff that's going to keep very important chips inside there and stuff cool down. I'm just trying to overgeneralize it. But you want that stuff to be functional and not cracked and dried, or else your temperatures are going to go up. And when your temperatures go up for an already overheating system, you're gonna have a lot of problems. So one of the first things you're going to start noticing if you're having these problems is that your PS3 is going to shut off randomly, and you're going to get a very specific sequence of beeps to let you know that it overheated. So, here I was, playing a PS2 game, getting some footage, trying to get through this game for a video project that I still haven't finished. The hyperfixation has died on this, and the project is super long, and I have 6 hours of footage that eventually I'm going to get through. But I started running into a bit of a problem. Randomly, my PS3 was starting to overheat. It was starting to turn off. And, I'm actually kind of using this thing now. I have multiple things I wanted to do with it. So I'm that's not good. And I know the writing is on the wall at this point. I'm I can't let this go on forever. So a little bit later on, eventually pulled together enough so I could order specifically a PS3 Slim. Because everything I was reading, a lot of those issues were kind of fixed by that model. And then I also, and this is going to be important later, not that this would have helped too much with my problem, but I also got myself like a 1 terabyte solid state drive to put in this new upcoming PS3. They do produce less heat and stuff. I don't know by what kind of margins that is. I don't know if it's significant enough, but I wasn't too worried about the PS3 Slim's heat to begin with. But let me preface this a little bit too. For my PS3, I specifically had it set up, and I'm going to be like careful about my word choices, but I specifically had it set up so the fan would kick on more often and at like higher speeds. I think if I remember my settings correctly and what I actually could control, that way I could try to reduce the heat on this thing. And even then, even still, it was still starting to overheat. And I understand like PS2 emulation is like very taxing, but that's kind of what I was using it for. So that's kind of a big problem if it's going to be overheating while doing stuff like that. So anyways, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be backing up all my stuff. This is just a ticking amount of time. I also want to be careful with my word choices with that, but this is only going to last so long. So I'm like, I gotta like preemptively jump on this before something actually does happen, and then I am, out of luck. So I was looking at specific models because if you kind of caught my drift of what I was talking about, I specifically wanted models that I could fully control and kind of just take care of everything I wanted on them. If you catch my drift. So from what I was reading, going through all the different models and stuff like that, early PS3 Slim models are like fully customizable, But trust me, like not everybody on eBay is listing the specific model numbers on the back or showing pictures of their PS3s. And if they are, they're raising the price because they know what they have. Hey, free market, do whatever you want with that. However, so like, I don't even know what I'm looking at half the time, if it's even a correct model number for what I was going to use it for. Now, what I did find out was that in Japan, one of the first runs of Slims, it seemed like, or at least an early enough run of the Slim, was a specific model for Final Fantasy 13, and once I realized that was an early enough model and I saw what it looked like, I'm like, oh, like not only is that a guarantee good model, but I also love the way it looks. It's like, it's white and it's got like pink on it in like kind of like the shape of lightning from Final Fantasy 13. So this thing looks awesome. It came with like an original controller that was white and stuff that came with the system too. I love the way it looks. I got to clean out the controller though. It's like it's all like getting like a bunch of ghost inputs and stuff like that, and I've read online that could be like due to corroded pads and stuff like that. But anyways, it looks great. I got a really good fair price on it. I imported this stuff, so I know this model's legit. All right, like as far as what I want to do, and I know my end goal is going to be significantly better than what I was starting with, because I also I forgot to mention that I have like the stock 80 gig hard drive in my original PS3, which is, if you know anything about PS3 stuff, that's nothing. A lot of games will hit like the 20 gig limit sometimes, 18 gigs, It's not like the PS3 where, a lot of that you're going to find might actually fit within like the 4, 5, 6, 7 range. It's like a lot of this stuff can be like almost doubled. And my 1360 has like a 700 some gig hard drive. It was a very weird amount. Like I've never like seen one of that size before. But yeah, like I have a bunch of space on there, and I'm like, I want a PS3 that's also going to be comparable to that. And I'm like, since I knew that you could put a solid state in these, I'm like, that's so cool. I know I'm barely going to get like a speed benefit, but I'm still getting a speed benefit, and it's still a solid state inside a PS3. So for my like techie nerdy brain, I'm like, this is the best thing ever. This is so cool. It's so overkill. It's so unnecessary. So anyways, I get everything in the mail pretty quick too, considering I'm importing half of the stuff. And first thing I do, I'm like turning it on. I want to see what firmware it is. I just want to make sure it works and everything. And I couldn't get a video signal at first. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, it's probably one of these issues where like, say you had your PS3 hooked up with component cables and then you didn't change the video settings and you plug in the HDMI, so you're not going to get an image because it's not like auto-detecting what you're doing. So I'm like, all right, it's probably just a case of that. And unfortunately for me, that's not exactly what was going on here. So I tried, AV cables, just straight RCA on my CRT. I wasn't getting anything. I tried component, and I wasn't getting anything. And, obviously I'm messing with the HDMI, and I already personally knew about how to, like, reset the video thing by, like, holding down the power button when you're turning it on. You'll get, like, a second beep that's supposed to reset to, like, 480p out of whatever, like, video cable you have hooked up, and I just, like, wasn't getting anything. And I'm like, oh no, I've had an issue like this before, but not with the PS3, with my Vita TV. And I love the Vita and the Vita TV like even more so. And I've had an issue with that for years, and I never found a solution online, unfortunately, because it's such a specific issue, and only so many people are even talking about a Vita TV, where unless I hooked it up to this one really garbage upscaler I had when I was a kid, because I didn't know what I was doing. It was like a cheap one I got online. It's actually really bad, and it adds a bunch of input lag and stuff, a bunch of latency, so it's really bad. But for some reason, my Vita TV will only ever display through that, and I wonder if it's because it's like bypassing HDCP protocols or whatever HDMI handshake's going on, and it's like the only thing anymore that I can get my Vita TV to display on, which means I just don't use my Vita TV like at all. But, that's something I can live with. I still have my Vita, it's whatever. Now, as far as this new PS3 is concerned, I'm like, no, I actually need this to be, like, good to go, and I'm not running this through, like, a garbage upscaler. First problem, I couldn't even find that upscaler to begin with to make tests, but I had a feeling it was a similar issue to that. But, luckily, eventually, through a bunch of power cycling, trying to boot into safe mode and stuff like that, I eventually got it to, like, boot up on, like, a monitor. Like, a secondary monitor I have that's only 1080p or whatever. I got to boot up on there, I got in safe mode, I like set everything up, I checked everything, I'm like, alright, we're good to go. PS3 is good to go, it's a good firmware and stuff like that. It's actually got the hardware, or the storage that it said it would, not that I was using that. It was like a 250 gig hard drive that came with those specific models, which at the time, that's, it's pretty good. The hard drive's not nothing, but that's not what I was using. Immediately, I'm going to, put a solid state in this. Alright, so, we're good. We're on to the next step. This is the scary step for me. I've never actually changed out a hard drive or a solid state on anything before. I know I'm like I said, super into technology and stuff. There's never been a time where I've really needed to do this in a way that I didn't understand before. Now, everything I was reading online, like, super simple. We take that bad boy out, we put in the new one, as long as it's a 2.5-inch thing, and, we install the operating system again, which that was the part I didn't, like, really like. Like, I understand that there's some basic functionality through, like, safe mode and stuff like that, but, like, reinstalling the firmware, and I'm like, alright, that's a little spooky. It was a little hard to find the specific firmware the PS3 was already online and stuff like that, but I'm like, I got everything ready. I'm like, I hope I can just kind of like plug and play this, and we should be good to go. So I plug it in, like I take out the old drive, I put the new one in, and I'm getting nothing. And I'm like, no, not again. I'm getting no video again. I'm oh my god. I'm like, not again. That was already a real headache to even get signal in the first place. So I'm like, that's not good. What do I do about this? So I keep power cycling, trying my monitor, trying this old Element 1080p TV I had, trying my normal 4K TV and stuff, and I'm getting nothing. Eventually, and sorry, I should have said too, like, I'm trying component cables, I'm trying AV, I'm trying, like, everything, and I'm getting nothing. So eventually, just through power cycling, trying to get the safe mode and stuff, I eventually got it to pop up again on my secondary monitor, my computer monitor. And so I'm like, alright, this is a good start. And it wanted me to, like, format whatever drive was in there. I'm like, that's great. And I went to go do that, and there's, like, no drive detected. I'm like, no! What are you talking about? I'm like, I watched the way I put it in and everything, and it seemed fine, but I'm like, oh no, alright. So I take it apart, put it back in, just kind of, like, slide it in and out again, just to make sure it was, like, kind of connected in there, and then I wasn't getting any video again. And this time, I wasn't getting it, like, for hours, and I'm not even exaggerating, for hours, and I'm like, this is really bad. I'm like, maybe it is the driver when I'm like, this isn't what I want to do, but I'm like, I put the old hard drive back in, the 250 gig hard drive, and I was still getting nothing, so I'm like, that's probably not even it anyways. So I put the solid state back in, because that's like actually what I want to use anyways, and I'm still getting nothing, and eventually I got it to pop up again on my second monitor, and it detected it, and I'm like, alright, I was worried about this stuff. I'm like, alright, we're good. And then it formats the drive. I'm like, excellent. I didn't have to do that through my computer or anything. And then it wants, like, the operating system, or, like, the firmware specifically. And I'm like, alright, I got that ready. I put the flash drive with the firmware in there, and it starts updating it, and then it loses video signal after, because it, like, restarts or whatever during the update. and then I wasn't getting video again. I'm like, no. I'm like, this is like the most crucial part to be able to see what I'm doing, because I don't know if it's doing anything or not. And if I just cut the power, I could be cutting the power during a firmware installation, which, you know, if you know anything about technology, that's really bad. That could actually corrupt some stuff. And I'm like, that's like, I just got the PS3. It's really nice and I want to use this, but I'm like, this is a serious problem. But I let it go, and I was letting it go for like 10, 15 minutes or something. I think I like ate some lunch or something while I was waiting, you know? And I was getting no video. And again, I tried component cables. I tried AV cables. I'm getting nothing. I'm like, what is going on with this? And obviously I'm trying to like reset the video. And so I had to cut the power. I had to cut the power. And then eventually, you know, I get power again. And then it's like, you know, it goes to like the next step of installing the firmware. I'm like, okay, that's weird, but let's do it. I'm like, I'm excited again. I'm like, let's go. We got video. I'm installing installing the firmware. It installs the firmware, you know, shuts down to reset, and then no video again. I'm like, okay, what is going on with this? What is going on? Because then I'm like, okay, the operating system's clearly installed, the firmware, and once again, I'm trying component, I'm trying AV, I'm trying HDMI, and I'm getting absolutely nothing. And at this point, I've been trying to do this for hours at this point, and I'm not dumb. Like, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing. I've done very similar stuff before, just like not specifically with replacing the hard drive in a PS3, but it's like I'm not dumb. You know, I know I know what I'm trying to do, but I don't understand what's going on. So once again, I eventually get video, but through component on my old 1080p Element TV, and I only was able to display it in 480i, and it was treating the component as an AV cable. And when I tried to set the video as component, because I got video for a minute, and it actually would like boot it up to the XMB. It was the proper firmware and everything. It showed my 1 terabyte solid state. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, I was worried I wasn't even gonna get to this step. So I'm like, all right, but like, what's going on with this video? I'm like, I could probably change the least component for now, and I'll figure out the rest later. And I went to go change the component, and I got a black screen, and I'm like, no, that's not good. And also, like, this is a component cable, and I'm set to the component channel on my TV. And, you know, normally you wait like 30 seconds or something, and if your like video isn't working because you have to like confirm it or whatever, then it'll reset back to whatever you're using before. In my case, technically, I guess AV, even though it was through component. And so I'm like, I'm giving it time. I give it a couple minutes. And it's doing nothing. And I'm like, what is going on? So like, I make sure my speakers are on and stuff like that. I'm moving around like the controller and stuff, and I don't hear anything. I don't hear like the XMB menu or anything. So I'm like, what is going on? I'm like that. I wish I didn't touch that. I could have at least done this in 480i for now. But I'm like, now I gotta get this to work again. And through a bunch of fumbling, taking it back out to my living room, trying the other TVs again, trying the HDMI, trying AV cables, nothing's working. Eventually, I put it back to the 1080 Element, which, you know, I was already trying at that point. Trying with AV cables again. And I'm trying, or the component cables, I'm trying the component through like my RetroTink, I'm trying it through the OSSC. I'm just getting nothing. Eventually, I got to boot it into safe mode. And then I had some video like that, for just the 480i component acting like AV. And I got into safe mode again, and then I got back into the menu. I'm like, all right, we're doing this bad boy all in 480i. I'll figure out the rest later. I've been spending hours on this. So my next step, I'm like, oh no. I'm like, I need to be on a higher firmware. I'm like right in the middle of where I need to be firmware wise, but I need to at least update the firmware once. So I'm like, all right, let's do it. So, you know, I get a later firmware, I install it, and you know what happens, you know, when you install the firmware, it has to shut down. Shuts down, no video again. I'm like, what is going on here? So eventually, you know, I cycle through all the steps again. I get video again. It's 480i component, whatever, which is like, it's garbage, but like, so I got video again, and I went through all the steps of installing, you know, the fun firmware and stuff. I got through all of that, but then obviously at the end, I have to restart it again, to install like the last bit of firmware I was doing, the last bit, like the last firmware, and it restarts. But luckily, I had video after that, so I'm like, all right, I'm done for the night. I got it. It's whatever. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on with it. I'll figure it out in the morning. So I was also like finishing installing the rest of the things I needed to install, but I'm like, I'm just doing a 480i. I'll live with it for tonight. But like, obviously, I don't want to use a PS3 like that. PS3 can do so much better than 480i. There's a lot of games that can even do something in between 720p and 1080p. I'm like, I'm not living like that. So this morning, I went to go like look at the video settings, and I'm like, all right, like let's see what's going on here. So then I tried to set it to component again, and for some reason, I didn't change anything. It just works. It works in component, and it went at least 1080p through component. I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is strange. I'm like, I haven't done anything differently. And I'm like, yeah, but like when I restart this thing, am I still going to have video? Sure enough, I still did. 1080p component. And I'm like, okay. But I'm like, this is on my old 1080p Element TV with component cables, which is not like what I'm actually going to do. I'm like, I need this through an HDMI. Both for like my upscaler that I use, the M Classic thing, and like for my capture card, because I'm not going to be, I can't like run 1080 component through the OSSC. Like, maybe you can bypass through there, but I want like a pure digital signal, So I'm like, all right, let's get back to it. So, take my PS3 back out to my living room, hook it up to my 4K, through an HDMI, and I'm like, let's just see what happens. I reset the video and stuff, and I'm getting nothing. Well, let me describe nothing at this point. What I mean by nothing is I get a black screen that says it's 480p. And that's it. No matter like what monitor, what device I'm using, it is black screen 480p. I'm getting 480p, but this time, for some reason, I'm getting sound. I'm like, ooh, and sound through the HDMI at that. And then I hear this time, I have menu control. I'm like, all right, let's go. So I watched like a couple videos online of people showing like the menu layout. I'm like, I'm gonna find video settings like this. I got this. So I navigated the video settings, and then I realized like I was getting lost in there, and I'm like, I'm going through different settings, and nothing's happening because I didn't really know where I was at. But eventually, I figured it out. I got it set to 480p, but actually working through the HDMI. I'm like, yo, let's go. I just realized I didn't set the color palette to full. I'm gonna have to do that. Now my footage probably isn't gonna look that good. Darn it. So, anyways, I got 480p through the HDMI. I'm like, that's great. I'm like, now here's the real test. We're going to set it to 1080p. We're going to use it through the upscaler, and then we're going to restart it. And everything's working. My solid state's working. The firmware's working. My HDMI is working now. And I don't know how to explain it. It was absolutely an awful experience. But it's working now, and I don't know why. I'm so afraid to ever plug this in a different TV or bring it anywhere because I don't know if it's going to go through all this garbage again. So, like, some of this was definitely my fault with, like, trying to reset videos at different intervals and me maybe not understanding how the videos are getting reset and stuff like that. But, like, a lot of this was just, like, it just wasn't displaying video. And I think maybe it was, like, an HDMI handshake issue or something, or maybe a faulty HDCP chip like my Vita TV. I don't know what the issue is. I'm able to get footage out of it right now, which is good because, like I said, I have I have a video idea that I need to use this PS3 for, so I can get a bunch of footage and not have it overheat. But everything's working now. This was a dumb, stupid, but fun story that I wanted to explain on how I was having so many problems with this replacement PS3. So let this be like a cautionary tale to you. If any of this helps, I don't know if it will, but if you're having these issues, literally just keep banging your head against the wall. Eventually, you're probably going to get it. And, like, seriously, like, I'm not like a tech help channel. This is just me telling a story right now, and then I'm, like, actually going to be using this PS3 for footage for this upcoming video I'm going to do. But, like, hey, if you're having an issue with this stuff, and, you keep it technically clean, I'm not going to help with anything unsavory. Like, I'll try to help you out and tell you maybe more specific steps of what I'm doing. Like, this is definitely user stupid error. Like, I was definitely being dumb during some of these parts. But then the other half, I have guesses, but I just don't know. And it took me all day yesterday and some of this morning, and it was just an absolute nightmare to deal with. But, you know, I have a working PS3 with a solid state now. I can get good footage of stuff. So, you know, all's well that ends well, but I don't wish to ever unplug this or move this thing for a long time. So, that being said, so wherever the end of this video is, you're going to have a little footage of the thing I'm working on, just like a tiny bit, just like a little preview of what it is. And with that being said, you know, I'm done for the day. I'm done with this. I hope you enjoy my little rant, my story of my PS3 upgrade. And, you know, just have a good day. Like, subscribe, whatever. I have more stuff coming out. This is just like an intermediate piece because I really wanted to talk about this awful setup I've had. So, you know, later.